How to get better at unprepared speeches. For many people, unprepared speeches are an absolute nightmare. And they used to be that for me as well. Until I practiced it every day in preparation for a public speaking competition I had coming up, which I ultimately ended up winning. And now I've developed this structure which I've used to help me speak in front of 2,000 people with confidence, receive standing ovations, and win public speaking competitions. And today, I'll share that exact same structure which I've developed with you. So let me quickly minimize my webcam here and simply show you this document, which is here. You can screenshot this, run away, and never come back if you really want to. But allow me to explain it to you so you can get a bit better understanding here. So, nutshell, how to get better unprepared speeches. It's simply a framework to guide you. All right. I remember being in high school and I was visiting a junior class just in the morning for register, saying, hey, what's up, guys? Giving a few fist bumps here and there. And the teacher in charge of that class, the tutor, she said, okay, guys, we have a little visitor here, Luca, and he's going to come and say a speech to you. Right, Luca? The one you prepared? And I hadn't had anything prepared. And she really threw me in the deep end there. And I was really in cold water. And for those 10 seconds as the class was slightly settling down, I had to think of something to say. And I already had the public speaking competition. I already developed the structure. So I already knew what my guide was going to be. And so thankfully I had this, and I was able to quickly say a story. And as I was saying the story, which I already had in my arsenal, I was able to get to the next idea and share some advice. And I think I ultimately ended up saying, when I was a junior like you guys, I wanted to be cool and I wanted to do this and that. I wanted to be rebellious. I didn't want to wear my uniform the way I should and blah, blah, blah. But now that I've, tried some things out and I've tried the different clubs and societies. I enjoy public speaking club now. I joined the Student Christian Association then, and that was cool. And it was nice to meet, see different points of views of the world and blah, blah, blah. And I gave them that. That was the kind of the gist of my whole speech. But it's way better than just standing there in front of them saying, I think like you should do what you love. Do what you love, guys. You're welcome. So it's not the best, most eloquent Shakespearean level speech in the world, but it's good enough, and it gave them a message, and I still came across as somewhat competent in those 10 seconds of preparation. So here it is. I always begin each of my unprepared speeches with a story. Prepared speeches, it's always the same structure. It always begins with a story. And stories are just so strong, so authentic, so charming. It's really the best element of any speech, and I really recommend you add stories not only to your unprepared speeches, but to your prepared, to your presentations, to your YouTube videos. It really does make everything you do a whole lot better. So the way we go about stories is we want 2 exercises, one called Homework for Life and one called Crash and Burn, and they're both journaling exercises. And so at the end of each day when we journal, if we don't journal yet, that's okay, just try add this to your nighttime routine. Homework for Life is all about trying to get one story-worthy moment from that day. All right. So yesterday, I'm currently I've moved to college, to university, medical school, and everything's really busy at the moment. And I called my mom yesterday, and I'd forgotten it was her birthday. And that really sucked. And so I just wrote down as my homework for life, called my mom today, it's her birthday, but I forgot. Sucks. So you get the idea. Not everything's this glamorous Tom Cruise jumping off the Burj Khalifa moment. But we simply just want little moments like that at the end of each day where we can have a story-worthy moment. And as time goes by, as weeks, months go by, we have an accumulation of stories. We have an arsenal of stories. And then what happens is by journaling every day, we know what moments make a story. So then as we live our lives, we might begin living them for the sake of getting some more stories, or we can just recognize them in the moment. Say, oh, that's a story. Oh, I'm currently recording this YouTube video and there's some strangers staring at me. Oh, that's a story, The second one is crash and burn. That's all just about, you set a timer for 5 minutes and you simply just write whatever comes to mind. And you just want to write as much down in those 5 minutes. You don't want any thinking. You don't want your pen to be off the paper. You don't want to structure your thoughts. Just take any mess, jumbled up nonsense in here, and spit it out on the page. That's the whole theory about it. And what that does is once you take everything here and just put it on the page, then you can kind of assess and see what's story worthy. I have storytelling notes, link in description if you want them. I think you should check it out because it's free and I put a lot of effort into it. So please check it out, guys. Jokes aside, they do explain the homework for life and story and crash and burn quite well. I have some examples in there and many other storytelling techniques, which will be of good use to you, I think. So we always begin with the story, and what stories do is they just allow you to speak. They buy you time to talk. They buy you time to connect to your audience, to make the topic your own, really. Because in a public speaking competition, we all have the same topic. But if I can come and add a personal story to it, and my own personal transformation and my own realization at the end of it, it just makes it incredibly personal, incredibly authentic, and unique. And that sets you apart from everyone else, which ultimately helps you to be a bit more memorable. So always open with the story. And at the end of each story, like I mentioned, there's always a realization. So I'm just double checking if my screen's actually recording. There's always a realization. So this is what clicked for you, what transformed you, the lesson or insight from the story. So to each story, there's always a 5-second realization. You know, let me think of an example. I had this story where I was watching football with my dad, and it was great, and we were bonding. You know, we scored the last minute winner and everyone's hype and happy except for me. And in that moment, I realized I didn't necessarily like watching soccer or, you know, the World Cup or whatever. But in that moment, I realized I just like spending quality time with my dad. Time where I could just be me. Time where I didn't have to live up to, you know, be someone I'm not, to someone else's expectations of what a son is supposed to be like. Time where I could just be me. I kind of butchered the execution there. It's an old story, but you get the idea. Something like that transforms you. So you have this whole story building up to it, and at the end, there's a deep realization. Transformed. That's a key insight to all stories, by the way. And there needs to be some substance at the end of it, and there needs to be some transformation. So in the beginning, you're fat. At the end, you're fit. In the beginning, you're ugly. At the end, you're charming. In the beginning, you're a piece of lead. At the end, you're gold, like an alchemist. So there always has to be some transformation, even if it's necessarily bad. You know, you don't always have to be Prince Charming at the end of it. Maybe you like, you know, the frog from Shrek. Maybe you're that. Maybe you're Shrek at the end of it. So there always has to be a transformation, though, and some substance / realization at the end of it. And then from that realization, we transition into our personal interpretation of the topic. So this is, for example, AI. The unprepared speech. Hey, Luca, tell us about AI. Whoa. My story would probably be the night before an assembly. I need to say a speech, and so I'm using AI to help me write it, and I'm stressed and I'm tired and I'm incredibly nervous. I have no idea how this is all going to work out, but hey, AI is there beside me, you know. Everyone else is sleeping. I don't have hot cocoa. I don't have anyone but AI. And in that moment, I realized that all you really need in life is just a little, I don't know, robotic love sometimes. Okay, I don't know where I'm going with that one, but essentially my interpretation of the topic would be AI equals good. Okay? AI is good. I like AI. He's really smart. You know, 3,000 IQ being. The ideas it gives me, it's completely transformed my learning experience. I can study more effectively. I can grasp more difficult concepts easily. He explains it in a far simpler way than any lecturer ever could. I love AI. It's amazing. That's what I think, right? That's my lens. That's my values. That's my experience. So that's point three, your personal interpretation of it. And then what you want to do is you want to say, yep, I think AI good, but I can see other cavemen think AI bad. So you essentially just want to acknowledge the opposite. Acknowledge that the POV, the contrast, the antithesis, the hot, the cold, right? Acknowledge the opposite view, show you've considered another perspective. And what this really does is it adds a third dimension to your speech, because it shows that, okay, this is personal, this can connect to you through the story. Two, you actually have a stance. You're not afraid to say what you think. This is what you value, this is what you believe, this is what you think, and you say it and you make that clear. And then thirdly, it's not just, hey, he's some narrow-minded guy who just loves a robot, virtual girlfriends. He actually understands the bad and the consequence and the alternate or opposing POV. So that's why we show the contrast, because it makes us come across as better, because we can understand the counter argument. And then what this essentially helps us to do is it says, yeah, I can understand that AI can be bad. I understand that it can be replacing some art. It's making music sound repetitive. It can make YouTube videos just boring and bland if you use it to write the script. It can, what we've used art throughout, centuries to express ourselves, to everything, blah, blah, blah. It's been the beauty of humankind, and now AI is coming along and replacing it and ruining it, and that sucks. But then you go and reaffirm your stance again. And what this, by saying this is what I think, and then showing the opposite view, and then still going back to point four to reaffirm your argument, that really shows that, hey, he's thought about it. He can still acknowledge and understand the opposite. And then he goes and reaffirms point four again, or point five, reaffirm his same stance. That shows depth of thinking, essentially. So you return to your insight, you say it cleaner and stronger. And what I mean by that is, so AI good, but yeah, AI can be bad, blah, 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 blah. But despite that, despite the challenges of AI, despite this and that, AI is worth it, And that's how you full circle your speech, and you almost solidify your stance, right? You tie it all together like a little bow. And then you end off with strong rhetoric. So if you don't know what Roman rhetoric is, I have a video coming out tomorrow on Roman rhetoric, and it's essentially just a persuasive art form developed by Greeks and I think refined by Romans, but Cicero used it. Many influential speakers throughout history have used it, like Katy Perry, like Kanye West. I'm just joking. They have, but obviously more influential. I'm talking JFK, Martin Luther King, William Shakespeare, me, Luca Bazooka. You understand it. So I found that's essentially just a memorable line. How to make something stick better, land better, and linger in the psyche of your audience, so you can be a bit more memorable. All right. And the strongest way I like to end off my speeches or realizations at the end of my stories is I use chiasmus. It's a technique, and much like when chromosomes overlap to share genetic material, the point of contact is called the chiasmata or chiasma. I'm pretty sure. So essentially, we're doing the same thing here. We're crossing sentences to share genetic material, kind of. So you're saying, ask not what your country can do for you, said JFK. Ask what you can do for your country. So you can see how we're kind of flipping the sentence. Don't climb life's mountains for the world to see you, but for you to see the world. Does that make sense? So you take it and you just flip it. And what that does is you end up saying the line, and then your audience has to backtrack and connect it and be like, whoa, that was really deep. So I found that, there's other techniques like anaphora, which is just repetition of a phrase, antithesis, which is contrasting ideas, hot, cold, up, down, yes, no. There's climax, like building up to it in groups of threes. There's different techniques we use throughout stories, throughout our speech. But really, if we want to make ideas land and stick, I found that chiasmus works the best. So that's why I use it at the end of a realization, if you can. But if you can only think of one really good, like rhetorically structured sentence, save it for the end. Save it for that strong rhetoric at the end. So either AI will be the end of man, or man will be the end of AI. You know, live by AI, die by AI. So you kind of get, that's more antithesis, but the first one was chiasmus for the most part. And you get the idea here. This is the structure. Screenshot this, save this, use it where you can. And I hope that does aid. I hope that does benefit you. Now, how to get stories. I've already mentioned this. Homework for life, crash and burn. They're both journaling exercises for you to do every night. It builds an arsenal of stories you can rely on. And eventually, what you want to do or aim for is you want to have 4 or 5 well-structured stories which you are comfortable saying and which you know more or less the ins and outs of. And so you can kind of manipulate these different stories for different topics, for different scenarios and examples in your life. So what I had was, obviously, when I was preparing for this public speaking competition, I had 4 stories, let's say, and I could kind of manipulate them based on what the topic was. So I had one where it was on Valentine's Day. I was in primary school, going to ask this girl I liked to be my Valentine. That one was more about love and learning the importance of family and stuff like that. Because the girl rejected me, but then I went home, spoke to my grandma who was sad, but then I realized I can just brighten up her mood, and you know, that's real love, you know. There was another one where I was watching, you know, the soccer with my dad, and I realized this and that one was more like personal challenges, pressures of the world, blah blah blah. It can be manipulated for that. Had another one where it was a bit more like sentimental. When I was a junior, I wanted to be a senior, but now that I'm a senior, I wanted to be a junior. You know, it's just the challenges throughout high school. And, you know, now it's like we're growing older, you know, that's where you can kind of reminisce on simpler days and blah, blah, blah. You know, very relatable, but also very pivotable stories, which they can pivot into different topics. So that's kind of the idea you want here. And yeah, story calms the nervous system. If you have a story which you're comfortable speaking, you can immediately just say it. If someone says, hey, Luca, quickly tell us why the grass isn't always green on the other side, I can immediately just say that story from high school. You know, when I was a little kid, I wanted to do this and that, but now I'm grown up, and hey, life's not actually that cool as you're getting older, blah, blah, blah. Because I know the story. I know what the jokes are. I know what the deep realization at the end is. I know how it transformed me. I know the story. I'm comfortable sharing it. And it calms me down. And then the audience, they hear it, and it's like, oof, it's refreshing. It just quenches their thirst for some authenticity finally. And this structure is just really like, you don't have to think about, you know, when you're going to say what. All you have to do is think about what words you want to put where. So this really just helps you. The contrast just builds credibility. It shows that you actually have some IQ and you can think critically, and it just shows this 3-dimensional depth of understanding the topic, thinking a bit further, and you know, that you can share insight, and that, yeah, I can hear you guys, but this is still what I think. And that's honestly respectable. And the rhetoric just locks it in. Rhetoric is so important for making points land. And when you say the rhetoric at the end, you just leave it. Don't even say thank you for your time. No, bro. Don't climb life's mountains for the world to see you, but rather for you to see the world. You're welcome, bro. Say you're welcome. You just gave them that gold, that chef's kiss poetry level sentence at the end of it. You're welcome, you know. Or in that moment, I realized great responsibility. No, greatness doesn't come with great responsibility. Great responsibility comes with greatness. I said that in one of my speeches as well. And essentially, how do we practice this? This is what I want from you now. So you've understood this. You've understood the theory. You've lots of my funny jokes and charm. What you have to do now is go and train this. So I want you to just go in ChatGPT and say, hey, give me 5 to 10 random unprepared speaking topics. Go get some AI stuff. Then give yourself a minute or two, 2 to 3 now when you're starting out, that's easier, but then 1 to 2 when you're feeling a bit more confident and you want to up the stakes a bit, of preparation time. Just quickly grab a little piece of paper, an A5 one, and just write these bullet points: story and then arrow. That's what the realization is. This is my POV, contrast, my POV again, and then just think of a strong rhetoric. Just give yourself that skeleton, and then go fill in the muscles with whatever you think about in those 2 to 3 minutes. Then you want to record yourself speaking for about 5 minutes. 5 minutes is honestly the sweet spot. 4 a little shorter, 3 is a little shorter, 6 to 7 minutes, that's slightly a bit more waffle, ramble. It's on the slightly longer end. It's good if it's well structured, but you don't necessarily know how it's all going in the moment when you're speaking. So rather just focus on the quality, focus on like ending with strong rhetoric rather than just trying to stretch out your story for forever, for the sake of speaking. Does that make sense? So if we can aim for 5 minutes, that's the sweet spot, the bullseye. And then, just record yourself saying it. And then you can just assess, where did you stutter? Where did you slow down? Where did you lose your trail of thought? Where did you use filler words like but, and so on? And like, you get the idea, like type shit, you know what I mean? And repeat this until you become comfortable with it. And if you want any more personal help from me, if you want to go through this practice with me, just check the link in the description because it's free. And what you really want to remember here is that it's not necessarily about the words you say and whatever that are going to make the unprepared speech land, but it's more so about the order you say it and how it all flows and how you transition from story to realization to my POV to contrast to reaffirming my stance to ending off with strong rhetoric. So if you know what to do where, if you have the skeleton, it's all just about filling in the muscles when need be. And so just like that, that's the video. Please let me know how it goes if you actually try this. You can comment it, or you can check the link in the description if you want, but it's really no stress if you don't. Hope this video was helpful and useful to you, and you can expect more videos like this in the future. I don't know if these Google Doc videos are better than whiteboard ones. I'll be experimenting with both. Why not both, honestly? But I hope this was useful to you, and I hope to see you in the next one. Take care.